Thank you so much for taking out time today and really happy and honored to have you.
I am so happy to be here. Thank you.
Okay, so we have been back and forth scheduling this conversation, and you've been a sport to wait for such a long time
It's all
and
good.
still make it. And the background is something very common that we both have. We are from the education industry, and very interesting conversation today. I think this it's the need of the hour for educators to discuss. So before I introduce, before we run into the conversation, I want you to introduce yourself. Where are you joining from? What do you do? And why this topic today?
Well, I am situated right outside New York City, which, for those of you who might have a preconceived idea of New Jersey, is actually what I say when instead of saying I'm from New Jersey. But New Jersey is a beautiful state, and here I am, very close to the city, and I am an author, educator, and consultant. And I have been thinking so much about some of the practices that when I started as an educator back in the mid 90s, that weren't as effective as I wanted them to be. I've really made that almost like a self study and published a few things in response to those problems of practice.
Wonderful. I have a book link of you that we will be talking about soon. Um, but today's conversation, feedback that moves learning forward.
Hmm.
Um, what made you realize that feedback could either shut learning down or move it forward?
Yes. Well, I think it was just looking at my students in whether it's the students that were when I was a classroom teacher or the students when I consult in schools and I demo in classrooms, it's the type of feedback that isn't corrective, though it is instructive, but it's also not fluff. Like that was the thing. I was really looking at writing in particular is that the most common feedback for writing for writers, young and old, are corrections. And teachers take hours and hours to pore over papers and correct them. And I really found that that took a lot of time. And if that time was worth it, where I saw improvement in student work, then I would gladly commit that time, but I didn't see improvement. And in my mind, I only had two choices, that it was correction as feedback or just fluff, like, hello, great, wonderful, nothing really specific. And so I was in search of a way to still be instructive, but not be corrective. And there's a lot of reasons for that correction kind of avoidance. It does a number on the student. Like the student getting corrected and knowing everything that they put down on a page or do is the response will be correction. They really don't take risks. They don't stretch themselves. They don't think even about like what they're doing well. Um, and it really limits and puts a lot of like shame around being a student, and it's just the discomfort, especially for kids that struggle, can really shut them down. And so I thought to myself, like, what is in between the fluff and the correction? And I found this beautiful model in my life of what I then translated into the classroom. So my father, uh, years ago, wanted to learn how to crochet, and my aunt Helen, his sister-in-law, is a master crocheter, and so I got to watch them. And she would come and she would sit side by side with my dad, and he only crocheted blankets, no other genre, no scarf or hat.
Mm.
And she would bring her own crocheting basket with her. Um, and my dad would show the blanket and probably make fun of some of the things that were not perfect, like a hole. And my aunt, first, before saying something or correcting anything, would say, "Yeah, but look at this part of the blanket over here. Those stitches, you must have been counting your stitches." And so she started off with a strength. So he knew what he was doing well. So he would keep on doing that. And then instead of saying, "Now let's correct this thing," she would say, "Because you were counting your stitches, you can use that and you're ready to try filling the holes of your blanket." And then she would say, "Let me show you how." So there was a real invitation set on a foundation of strength and a very clear model. And she was only choosing one thing to teach him. And he would try it and she would coach her. And I feel like that 3 to 4 part response, that type of feedback, is incredibly impactful. One, where we start by naming strengths. And so students know what those strengths are, when to use them, perhaps, and what's important about it. And then an invitation into a next step of learning. It doesn't feel like we're fixing the student, it feels like an invitation into our next steps of growth. And that kind of tone in feedback is holding the tenderness of every student inside them, and respecting that. But it's also not fluffy. It's not like,
Yes.
"Ooh, it's so great. I love the way you did that." It is, "Here's something specific that's strong." And then the phrasing I like to use is, "Because of that strength, you are ready for this next step."
Wow.
And that type of feedback I have found is simple, direct, and very impactful.
Wonderful. I can you have set the foundation of this conversation, like why this topic today, and how critical it is in the journey, not just for a student, for anyone for that matter, who
Mhm.
gets a feedback, and how they can lean into, instead of judgment and evaluation, you can lean into growth, and
Mhm.
how you have evolved in the process of doing what you're doing.
Yes.
And I can completely relate from the time, as you said, 90s. This wasn't the scenario.
Mhm.
Maybe now it is little, like as you said, the word fluffy, right?
Mhm.
It's like just superficial. It's not something that is genuinely creating or acknowledging certain aspects, as you said, strength,
Yeah.
and helping people, see uh,
Yeah.
growth, evolution, how they are doing with what they are learning.
Yes.
So there's so much I can talk around this itself, but let's move to the next question. What does strengths based feedback actually look like in practice? I think you already shared one
Mhm.
about your from your father's story.
Mhm.
Academically, if you can give an example, as a
Mhm.
consultant, how that looks like for a student, in let's say when they talk about grades and
Yeah.
numbers.
Yes. Well, just to have like a moment of talking about the difference there, grades are obviously important in this world. I wish we could change that. But those kinds of grades are very important. When students know that the feedback they're getting isn't based on or isn't connected right at that point to a grade, there's a much greater uh, openness to hearing the feedback. So there's taking the grade part off of it and knowing, and I'm quoting a fifth grader, knowing that the feedback that they're getting as they're moving through whatever it is that they're learning will help them have a stronger grade at the end. But it's not about grading at that moment. It's simply, it's formative assessment, really. And when we look at uh, the research behind formative assessment, we can double the rate of student learning when we are giving feedback that is timely, that is specific, and that isn't a summative type of grade. Like, okay, I just told you what your strengths were, and I told you your next step, and because you have this next step, your grade is lowered. If that is conflated, it's going to be really hard to build that type of comfort and relationship in order to give the feedback throughout the learning process. So I just want to start with that. Um, this an example, yes, I gave as a metaphor of the relationship between my dad and my Aunt Helen, but that very same thing can happen very easily. And I just offer to educators almost like sentence frames that we can use just to start getting into the habit of noticing and naming strengths. For those listening, I know that inside their minds, they're saying, well, what if there isn't a strength? We'll get to that in 1 second. um, but if we're looking at a piece of student writing, and let me tell you a story actually. A couple of years ago, I was asked to work with a student, and teachers always watch me demo. I haven't been teaching in a classroom in a very long time where I haven't been watched and studied by teachers. That's part of the work I do. And they asked me to work with this fourth grader named Maddie, and Maddie had not written anything except the tiniest little bit in her notebook, and she would spend writing time hunched over her notebook. She wanted nothing to do with this. And my only rule when I demo in a classroom is that I don't make a student cry. Like if the student is going to feel uncomfortable, and that's the rule. And if there was a student that looked like they were going to cry, it
Yeah.
was Maddie. So I was like, I will try. I said, but the second it feels too uncomfortable for her, I'm going to step away. So here's what I did. She's laying on top of her notebook, and I said, Maddie, can I peek into your notebook, please? And she like pushed it out from under her. And I saw that the one thing that she did is a tiny little sketch on the first page. And to many, that may look like nothing. But if we really zoom in and just think, how can I name that as a strength? So I said to her, I see that you sketch to help you write. There's so many authors that do that.
Yes.
And because you sketch in order to help you write, I can show you how to do that with this piece of writing that the class is working on. So it's just simply naming what's there. It's saying that what you have is what you need to continue to grow. And so Maddie sat up, and I showed her a way to sketch for, they were writing opinion pieces, and she went ahead and did. And I just want to say the only people crying at that moment were the teachers because they were so happy to see that type of engagement where they hadn't seen it before. So it's very powerful. And if we really could balance out naming people's strengths, maybe even in greater proportion to corrections, there's power in that. When students own it, they embody it, and then they continue to do that. If we don't know what's strong, how do we know that we should keep doing it or why it's strong? And so that based feedback in any realm, I'm talking the classroom, but yes, anywhere, really solidifies learning, helps someone own it, and releases the shame or fear of the conversation of the next steps.
So beautiful. And I know if this could be implemented across, this could I would say, uh, maybe eradicate is not the right word, but no, uh, let students not suffer from so much of stress and trauma. If the
Yes.
small correction could be done, and we could find those ways to,
Mhm.
acknowledge them, and
Yes.
see the way forward, let them see the way forward. And how, one
Mhm.
beautiful thing you said was, it's all that you need is there,
Mhm.
and to get to
Yes.
where you want to be. You don't have, like that conversation, like I'm enough
Yeah.
wherever I am.
Yes. Exactly. And when, let's imagine Maddie had nothing on the page and we had difficulty, even though we want to dig deep because it is possible to find strengths. Um, when we can't, we can also normalize the struggle.
Mm,
So I could have also said to Maddie, I heard this author say that the scariest thing to an author is a blank page. And that might feel the same way to you right now. I can show you what to do to move from this blank page into some writing. So it's also normalizing the struggle because that is real. Like
yeah.
we get stuck and stumped, and um, a lot of time it's like a shame spiral. And when we can normalize that, it's not just you that goes through this, it's every author, it's every scientist, it's every um, phys ed, sports experience. It happens to everyone. And so because of that, and it's happened to me, so I can show you how to work through that.
Yeah. So this was one simple strategy that we were going to discuss for teachers to implement. Like, both the examples that you shared now are amazing. To, actually a good place to start, at least,
Mhm.
to look at giving a feedback that helps. Okay. So now, like you have spoken about re-envisioning grammar instruction. I hope I'm getting this correctly. How
Yes.
does feedback connect with grammar learning?
Oh my gosh. Well, let's think about correction again. What is the thing we correct the most? It's the grammar. Probably because that's what happened to us. That's habitual. That's what has been the default mode of response, especially to writing. And because that is the thing that is corrected the most, it's also the part that I think is wrapped up in the most shame and embarrassment. Let's just talk about adults, let alone students, when it comes to grammar. Adults that know grammar boast about it. They wear t-shirts that say, "I'm silently correcting your grammar," or they have mugs that say, "Grammar Police." So
Mm,
there is this undercurrent of the haves and have-nots of grammar. The methodology that was used to teach grammar and is still employed today, where it's like worksheet identification and then expectation of immediate usage and proficiency, uh,
mm,
it failed most of us. So those of us who don't know grammar as well as we want to are hiding that. And especially teachers. Teachers walk around like with the belief that they're supposed to know everything there is to know about grammar because they're a teacher. And that's just unrealistic. And that stands in the way
mhm,
of giving constructive feedback in grammar. And so it's the first place we go to correct. So it's unlearning some things, but we
mm,
can still do that. So let's just talk, say, punctuation. Um, we might say we're not seeing um, punctuation often. Maybe we're seeing punctuation like once on a page or something like that. we can still give very constructive, strength based feedback on that. We can say, I see right here that you used punctuation at the end of your sentence. That's important because your reader knows where to pause for a
Yeah.
moment. And because you did that, you're ready to use more punctuation throughout your piece. Let me show you how to do that. And
Yeah.
then instead of me showing where to put the punctuation, because if I do that, they're not learning how to punctuate, I will give steps
Yeah.
on, okay, first, read this out loud.
Mm.
Second, listen for a natural pause. This is just one way, there's many ways.
Yeah.
Listen for a natural pause. Choose what kind of punctuation you'd like to use and add it.
Beautiful.
Repeat. And then we're not going to expect perfection right away. We're going to expect improvement. We're going to expect approximation, not perfection.
Wonderful.
And if at the same time, when we think about grammar instruction and we re envision the way grammar learning happens in the classroom, the way we give feedback changes
Mm.
because we can refer to, remember when we were constructing compound sentences and you were using manipulatives to do so? Let's think about what we learned from there and let's look back at those steps of what we did to create those compound sentences. Now let's try that with your writing. So, if we have an inquiry based, play based, um, correction free type of approach to grammar instruction, it's so rich in learning that the type of feedback we give in writing them can be based on that.
Yeah.
So, just a little like, uh, I guess, endorsement from a student. I was in Virginia and I was showing a series of experiences that I often suggest over time, but I was doing it all in one period. And I told the students, seventh grade, I told the students, I'm sharing with the teachers here a different way of learning grammar, a different way of teaching grammar. And when we were done and I was leaving, a seventh grade boy in the classroom stood up and said, "That's so much better than the old way." And so when I hear a seventh grade boy say that, I
Yeah.
feel like, yes, we found something that does the trick, that really makes grammar learning engaging, meaningful, and useful.
Yeah. And see, this is some strategy that you can say. The way we give feedback, as you say, correction free uh, zone, and this can go not just academically but personally when you are working with people, any environment, family environment, work
Yeah.
environment. You can be better in how you are helping others instead of
Mhm.
correcting them, and helping, and the ownership side of it, how do
Yes.
they own it, and
Yes.
they take that leadership to, take it forward. Very
Yes.
beautifully shared. And tell me, like, if people are listening to this and they want to connect with you, beyond this conversation, where are you
Mhm.
the most active on social media, and how they
Yes.
can reach you?
I am most active on Instagram at the moment, and my handle is PMG McGee.
Mm-hmm.
I have a website that is rich in resources and free downloads and things like that. And so my website is pattymcgee.org. And I just want to point out the spelling of my name, Patty, because a lot of people spell Patty with an I. And if you Google Patty with an I, you're going to get a very famous skateboarder from the 1960s. So it's Patty with a Y, McGee.org. Um, and that's a great place because it's just chock full of resources and you can get in touch with me there. We can talk about possibilities of working together or just talk about possibilities of what classrooms can look like when we see problems of practice.
Beautiful. Now, I would recommend all the people, if you are an educator listening to this, no, I would invite you to explore the resources Patty has, and you'll find the details in the descriptions with the links that you can explore. And Patty, I have one more question for you.
Mhm,
Like, if every educator listening today changed just one thing about feedback tomorrow,
mhm,
what should it be? I think you have shared it, no, in different ways, but
mhm.
to make it simple and, like we are
Yes,
reiterating on it. So share
yes.
what you have to say.
So I think that one of the things that is really important that I haven't articulated, but I've given examples of, is that our feedback is emotion free.
Mm,
It's not loving something because then students are looking at our emotions. They're looking at what makes us happy. They're looking at making us happy.
yeah.
And so a neutral, here is a strength, here's why that's important, isn't all mushy gushy lovey dovey. And I'm not saying we don't share how much we love something in the classroom. I'm just saying that at the point of feedback, that when we take ourselves out of it and our emotions out of it and are just very neutral, the feedback is more effective and direct to a student so that they're not feeling as though um, the emotions of us as the educators are driving what they do. They're driving what they do. We're helping them notice those strengths and pay close attention to them and offering next steps, but without feeling frustrated. Even if we don't show it without feeling like overly mushy. If we are, we still don't show it. Just at that point of feedback, just at that point.
Yeah. So I could remember when I started my entrepreneurship journey, and I had a mentor, and being a newbie in the zone,
Mhm.
I would make tons of mistakes, and I may not be aware, like I'm doing something wrong, I would say. But I started taking feedback, in a
Mhm.
very constructive way, or something that would help me grow, rather
Mhm.
than somebody pointing fingers at me.
Yeah.
Being an adult, it is too difficult to take feedback, but I remember this line from my mentor. He would just say, "Are you ready for a feedback now?" So I would prepare myself, like
Yeah.
I have to keep my emotions aside, I have to
Yes.
keep myself aside, and then be available for this conversation. So that one reminder would set the tone for me. Now, this could
Yes.
be done with adults, but with
Yeah.
children, you know,
Yeah.
it's different. But we need to do it, like something in disguise. Be
Yeah.
conscious about and aware about doing things. So, yeah, beautiful.
Absolutely.
I love this conversation, Patty. And is there anything that is coming up people can look forward to? You are hosting something or anything about the book? Please do share. Tell us about the book, how they can buy.
Sure. So the book is called Not Your Granny's Grammar, an innovative approach to meaningful and engaging grammar instruction. And it can be found anywhere books are found. So your Amazon, your Barnes and Noble, but also the Corwin website, corwin.com. There is, if you use the code SAVE20, you'll get 20% off and free shipping. And this is really the heart of my work right now. Although I am fascinated by all things literacy, all things teaching and learning, I have many things that are available, podcasts and articles and resources that are all tied to grammar and how grammar can really um, change the way we read
Mm-hmm.
also and write. And so that's my big work right now.
Thank you so much for putting, not just sharing this on this. It looks so simple, but it has a huge, I think the way people look at taking feedback itself, for not just for academics but for life,
Mhm.
can 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 make a huge difference in students' life and how they take their progressive, learning journey with much ease, and rather than the stress of uh, holding your integrity together
Yes.
as a person, right? So it's
Yes.
I think this would help, and I'm sure your book is a great resource, and I'm happy that you could put this out together as a book for people to read, learn from it.
Thank
And
you.
this is a skill, this is a habit, or this is a way of giving people a response, uh, which can work not just in writing or reading, but in other areas of life as well.
Yes.
So
Yes,
thank you, dear.
absolutely. And I just to insert in here, my first book is Feedback That Moves Writers Forward. So if you're looking more for feedback rather than grammar instruction, it's
Wow.
also from Corwin. So all of what we spoke about in terms of feedback is in there.
Great. So I'll share all this information in the description so that people can further, explore the work that you have put together, and it's so much useful. I think this should reach every teacher, this should reach every school, library, and this should transform the way we are giving feedback. That that is actually deciding how children take up themselves as well as what they are doing with
Yes.
their learning. So thank you, dear. Any closing message for the people?
Ah, I always worry about teachers' well being, that when we talk about changing something like we're talking about today, um, that we put so much pressure on ourselves to be perfect and to not try anything new until we feel perfect at it. And I would say be gentle and allow yourself to play and practice and see what the outcome is and adjust as needed without shame. And just know that that in and of itself brings great satisfaction professionally, and also creates greater connection with our students.
Yeah, and with yourself as well. There is always room that there is a next level for you.
Mhm.
So don't stay, not to stay in the perfect zone.
Yes,
Keep exploring, as you said, play and practice. So thank you, dear. Maybe I'll look forward to more conversations
I would
in
love.
the future, maybe another topic. But for today, that's it from my end. So take care and see you soon. Bye.
Yes.